Good morning. It's really morning. I need inspiration today. Hallelujah. Anyway, chapter 8. Mostly. Here, there are many routes to living a merciful life in this mean and dangerous world. Assorted ways to find and extend inclusion after lives of cheeky isolation. A number of walkways to awakening and gratitude. And there are 2 goat paths to the peace of self-forgiveness. The first is to get cancer. All the people I've known who have received a terminal diagnosis have gotten serious about joy, forgiveness, simple pleasures, new green grass, massage, cherries, the summer's first peaches, and have been able to find good enough peace toward people who did unforgivable damage to them and their families. They know they are going to die one of these days, but maybe not today, so they live, savor, rest, wake up kind of amazed. The second is to fall in step with a teacher, briefly or forever. A real teacher who makes it clear that even as he or she points to the moon, we have got to stop staring at the person's fingers. If we want freedom from grudge, we will at times need wise counsel. Teachers with flashlights, forgiving ratfinks who have betrayed a beloved, let alone forgiving one's own disappointing self, is grad school. Without these studies, we live so small. Every one of us sometimes needs a tour guide to remind us how big and deep life is meant to be. Mercy means that we no longer constantly judge everybody's large and tiny failures, foolish hearts, dubious convictions, and inevitable bad behavior. We will never do this perfectly, but how do we do it better? How do we mostly hold people we've encountered with the understanding of a wise, caring mother who has seen it all, knows that we all struggle, knows that on the inside we're as vulnerable as a colony of rabbits? Sometimes, when we cannot take it one more day, like the renowned octopus who recently escaped his aquarium and headed toward the sea, a mentor appears who knows things, and more important, knows that he or she does not know things. We want what that person has, a gentler way of seeing, a less rigid way of thinking, less certainty, more play. 30 years ago, 1 week after my last drink on a hot July afternoon, a tall and rather plain woman came up to me in a room of sober people. She extended her grimy hand to me. She was a gardener. I found out she had been a junkie and had gotten clean 10 years earlier at the alternative drug rehab Synanon, famous for having had 2 of its members put a rattlesnake in the mailbox of an antagonistic lawyer. She was funny, but seemed to be in a bad mood. I was too. I had woken up days earlier, hung over in deep animal confusion, as I was most mornings. Why couldn't I stop drinking after 6 or 7 friendly social drinks? Finally, the exhaustion of living this way had propelled me to a group of people who had somehow found a way out, a path with one another's company and bad coffee. People who were laughing about their crazy thoughts and pasts. Most of them were overly cheerful, but Loretta was cranky, and I like this in a girl. She was 10 years older than I, shop-worn with long legs, a light brown bob, and glasses. I wanted what she had, although it is hard to say what that was. Besides sobriety, with humor intact, She had a jaunty outlaw energy, but even more magnetic, a depth of kindness visible in her watchful eyes. She asked how I was, tense and judgmental, and how many days I had sober. 7. And I said I was thinking about just having one beer as it was sweltering. She said, "Of course you are." She got me a cup of coffee with 4 sugars and we sat in a corner. She listened to the bones of my story. I was 32, with several published books and the local love of my family and lifelong friends. I was loved out of all sense of proportion, yet I got drunk every day. I was poor and bulimic, but adorable and cherished. There was one problem: my insides. The elevator was going down. It only goes down. As Billy Hayes said, the bad machine doesn't know he's a bad machine. My mind and spirits and behavior were deteriorating faster than I could lower my standards. Then Loretta told me her story. She'd been put in an orphanage after her mother died, although her brothers lived with their father. Her cousins gave her a shot of speed at 15, which is how she discovered what she wanted to do with her life, i.e., drugs. Not knowing, of course, that this would come to involve turning tricks, alcoholism, and Synanon. She was smart, with no formal education, a voracious reader, and she had what I wanted: a way of taking each day as it came, mostly with humor and even gratitude. What she had could not quite be put into words, but the best way to capture it may be to say that she knew what wasn't true. The other women in the room had taught her how to stay sober, and she'd found that being sober delivered almost everything drinking promised. She could teach me if I was interested. Writing was involved, and even worse, forgiveness of those I felt had harmed me and my beloved. If I wanted this, I could give her a call. I prefer to do things and figure things out alone. I was drawn to the idea of disciplines like Tai Chi and yoga, where the forms are the teacher. But against all odds, I picked up the leaden phone. "I will come get you at 11:30," she said. "Take a shower and try not to drink till then. The shower is optional." I didn't drink for an hour at a time, and I showed up. Or rather, Loretta picked me up before noon most days. We hung out with these other women who had betrayed their families and deepest values, and who told me, "Guess what? Me too. I have those secrets, that self obsession. It's okay. Let me get you some cookies." They convinced me that my disease wanted me dead, but would settle for getting me drunk. Loretta told me to pray for the people I couldn't forgive, even though she didn't believe in God, to pray for 14 days that they have everything I want for myself, to pray for 14 days that they have everything I want for myself: health, love. By the 9th day, I said I sort of wanted it for them, but mostly I wanted to stop praying for their miserable selves. She said no. When all else fails, follow instructions. So I soldiered on, and it worked, mostly. She taught me I could get better by taking right action. Then she taught me how to teach other women, as she had been taught the forms, and that no one had the answers. It wasn't just that I was slow or doing a bad job. I could improve marginally, inch by inch. Life wasn't black and white, good or bad. That was an impoverished way to see life and people. We were so much the same, except for our histories. We'd been such good girls, able to tell ourselves that our parents were okay, they loved and would protect us, even as we were scarred by their unhappiness. Then the world got its mitts on us, no matter that we put our best shining faces forward, and we stayed alive however we could. We grew into women with big hearts, scars, and dark secrets. mostly gentle and kind, mostly generous, with areas of weakness and craving. When I was a child, I knew a fabulous dog named Mostly, who was mostly beagle, mostly a love bug, who every so often bit one of us, although not all that hard. Loretta and I were mostly okay. She picked me up every day and we cruised and listened to Graceland, which had just come out. The title song was about a woman so promiscuous that she called herself the human trampoline. But Paul Simon sang that he understood that she was just bouncing into Graceland. And I had a moment of clarity that this is what we were all doing. I had converted to Christianity while drunk in a tiny church, and about a year later, several months sober, I was baptized. My pastor was a tall, brilliant, progressive preacher named James Noel, who looked a lot like Marvin Gaye, which was only part of the reason I kept coming back. I called him the morning of my baptism to tell him that regrettably I'd have to cancel the baptism as I was currently too damaged and foul for words. I promised to call him when I got a bit better. He said to get my butt over to church, that I wasn't going to heal sitting alone on my 10 by 12-foot houseboat. He said I didn't have to get it together before I could be included, and in fact couldn't get it together without experiencing inclusion. So Loretta picked me up and I got baptized. She helped me stay sober for a couple of years, taught me life 101, pay bills, return phone calls, dance sober, breathe. I, in turn, urged her to pursue nursing school, which she did, and she struggled to barely pass. She taught me humility. I was a hotshot when we met when I first got sober, but she helped me work my way up to servant. We gradually drifted apart as I fell more in love with sobriety and she less. She started drinking again. This scared me to death. If it could happen to her, it could happen to me. I shut down once more. Weeks later, my Marvin Gaye preacher moved on. My heart was doubly broken, but in my pain, I became teachable again. Beginner's mind. I listened better. We had a revolving door of ministers at my church for a year, some good, some bad. One dubious preacher in Hush Puppies gave a sermon that seemed to last 4 hours. I stayed only because I needed the food and comfort of our small choir who sang from the roots of the earth and their faith, a beauty that vibrated in the air. I stayed, twisting and keening in silence while the minister droned on, and then she threw the lights on for me, about me, and the women at the well. So there's nice old Jesus one afternoon sitting near Jacob's well, pooped, when a Samaritan woman approached to draw water. A dirty, disgusting Samaritan. Why was the woman there at such an odd time? All the good women came early when it was still cool, women who wouldn't go near her because she was a prostitute. Jesus asked her for a drink of water from her vile Samaritan utensil. You just didn't do this. Jesus and the Jews went to elaborate lengths to observe purity, and his eating with hookers and tax collectors was one of the things the Pharisees later charged him with. It's mercy beyond imagining that he would even approach her, and then create a container for the two of them, and then remain in conversation with her. It's the longest conversation Jesus has with any one person in the Gospels. The woman said, "Let me get this straight. You want me to get you water? Unclean Samaritan me? What's up with that?" With a Jew wanting water from a Samaritan. She insisted that the rift between Jews and Samaritans could not be healed. He said the time would come when they would all worship together. He said she would learn to worship God instead, in spirit and in truth, the opposite of the material world. Not degraded bodies and segregated temples, but what is real, heartful, integral, merciful, eternal. It would no longer be, I'll worship God here, you stay over there. He meant you didn't compartmentalize life or yourself into two bins, into good, bad, clean, dirty, us, them. Jesus said Samaritans would be treated with honesty and fairness. This blew her mind. Jesus told her, now go call your husband. He knew she didn't have one. He wanted her to move out of the lie into authenticity, but first she had to admit to how she was living her life. People in recovery would call it taking a thorough and fearless moral inventory and then sharing that with another person. Jesus offered himself as a loving listener, a no judging ear. He invited her to come clean. His invitation was a call to a new life, not to be a receptacle for men, but rather a carrier of the good news. There was a huge love loose in the world, of which she was part and parcel. This is the kingdom of God. It was an invitation to be changed, to have a complete psychic change from ultimate outsider to welcomed, beloved. She said, oh, no, thanks. I love this. She kept lying. Jesus did not stomp away. He stayed with her. Such mercy and patience. He countered by saying that she wouldn't be getting water at noon unless something was seen as being wrong with her. That must have hurt. So Jesus said, let's talk about that. That is where you'll start from what is real instead of from the lie. He had to badger her into accepting a call to a sweeter life. The woman finally confessed to what her life was like, and he said, well done, girlfriend, welcome. He told her about a spring within her, a well that wouldn't run dry, a holy breath that connected her to the whole, to the illimitable, to love. She was transformed. Then she did what the sober women who fished me out of the bad waters did. She told others. She left the well in the confidence that she would be welcome, having just tasted this welcome, the great shalom, or that if she wasn't, it absolutely didn't matter. She didn't need the approval of the rough men. She had the gold ticket in her pocket. She told her family, neighbors, former clients about this strange man she'd met at Jacob's Well. Why would they believe the town hooker? Because they could see with their own eyes an astonishing transformation, and they wanted what she had. She's all of us who have felt marginalized by society, who have come from chaotic or stifled families, walking around on eggshells, even as small children, thinking we were shit. We failed to redeem our parents' lives, failed to fulfill their expectations. We got the bad message in our families. We got it from magazines and TV. We got it at school from children and from homework that revealed we either weren't up to it or were teachers' pets kissing us. You couldn't win for losing. It was like the carnival where you have to be tall enough for the ride, and you aren't yet. And then you're too tall. You missed it. All it takes is one safe person to listen, to hear, to nudge us to start over and not give up. My safe, true person was Loretta. I was no longer so scared that my shame and inadequacies would be trumpeted because she let me see hers and we laughed. The truth was no more our inadequacies than our personalities, our personas, our histories. As C.S. Lewis supposedly said, we don't have souls, we are souls, we have bodies. I didn't see Loretta for years while she was drinking. Then one day, my mom, who was sick with Alzheimer's and diabetes, asked me to come down to the assisted living place and meet her fantastic new nurse. It was Loretta. When I arrived, she was cutting my mom's short, sparse hair, and my mother was beaming and as regal as the queen. Loretta and I rejoiced. We both looked like soft sculpture versions of our younger selves. She still wore her hair in a bob. She was no longer drinking, although she admitted to a fondness for prescription drugs. She was still cranky. My mother fell in love with her, and she with my mom. My mom literally got to feel married for the last 2 years of her life. God is my witness. It was a miracle that my lonely mother got this. Loretta gave her shots, haircuts, neck rubs. They talked endlessly about me and their cats. Loretta and I were never out of each other's lives again for long, up to her last day, when she died last year at the same assisted living place, loved by the nurses, her brothers, nieces, and her two closest sober women from the old days, including me. Jesus said to the women at the well, "Be like me. Be true to who you really are. Be in truth. Share. And above all, try to forgive." This is such bad news for those of us who would like to even the score at some point. On bad days, we can still feel all my enemies are drowning and it's the best day of my life. Jesus says, "That's fine, honey. Nice try. I still love you." But maybe you would consider restarting the forgiveness stuff. Maybe you might practice inclusion. I still remember the droning voice of the preacher in Hush Puppies who taught me this. And then I stayed uncomfortable and understanding next to nothing until I heard the words I needed. But the choir fed me till then. Their voices were like a life raft in choppy waters, and the lightweight boat held me, and the harmonies of words I couldn't make sense of gave voice to a beauty inside me which I could not yet access and could not possibly have made by myself. When I read to you again, it will be chapter 9, The Open Drawer, and then that will be the end of this book. And so our choices for the next book are all around. I don't know what we'll pick. We'll decide shortly. But you who subscribe can vote if there's a book you'd like me to read next that you think would be good for all of us in this coronavirus season. I love Anne. I love all the books I read that she wrote and all the books I have yet to read. I love her brutal honesty and her truth-telling and her ways with faith and words. Thanks for tuning in. If you are, I'm going to comb my hair now. Oh, happy coronavirus day. Is it day 10 or 11? I think it's day 11. They're all a little blurry now. But that's okay. We'll get through this. The magic number of death, 21,337. That just changed when I looked at it. Get up to. But I also realize I want to bring a balance to that observation. The number of folks who have recovered, 117,327. 201 countries have the counter on for them right now. Hallelujah anyway. Don't know why that's the calling, but it is. Blessings on your courage.